Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Funny Shapes. If you don't know me, I'm your host, Lottie, and on today's episode, we're going to talk about the Canadian Grand Prix. So, as usual, we're going to start from Friday to Sunday. We have a few topics in between. Let's get started. So, on Friday, as usual, the Canadian weather was absolutely chaotic. We had hailstorms, lots of rain and wind, and we had two very, very wet practices. Mercedes was doing pretty good, but by now we're like, okay, they're doing good in practice, but we can't trust their pace in practice because usually they're okay in practice and then their pace just evaporates for quali and for the race. But they were showing something in practice, so we're like, okay, they're doing okay. Ferrari was also doing just fine during practice 1 and practice 2, as well as McLaren. Then nothing major happened on Friday except for the crazy rain. We move on to Saturday. Saturday, during the third practice, that's when Ferrari started to struggle. Don't know what happened. They just dropped down a lot. And I was like, okay, it's just practice, but I was scared. Mercedes were doing still pretty amazing, which is like, okay. Then we get to qualifying, and the rain was just looming over the track, and everyone was like, okay, let's try to put times on the board as quickly as possible. That's what they did until we get to Q2, and Ferrari gets knocked out. Not only Carlos, but Carlos and Charles get knocked out. Which was like, no way. I was just staring at the timetable with all the drivers, and I was like, what just happened? What in the actual freak just happened? Because it was insane, because Carlos was trying to put on a lap. He couldn't put on a lap. Charles was like, driver at risk. Lance puts on a lap and knocks Charles out, which was like, okay. So that's how this is going. I was very mad. I was like, what is happening? Like, how did we go from Monaco to get a pole position and a P3 to getting knocked out in Q2? It wasn't fun. It really wasn't. And I think the entire Tifosi was like, okay, so we're back to normal Ferrari behavior. But yeah, then Q3 was absolutely amazing because we had George and Max setting the same time for pole position, but since George set it first, he got a pole position, but that hadn't happened since 1997, which is absolutely insane. And it was so cool to see just like 112 something something, and then Max in second, it was like plus 0.000. It was amazing, even though we were like, okay, we can't trust the Mercedes on pole with Max behind. But still, very good qualifying. We get the iconic George position, which I really want to know if he planned that out. Like, his engineer was like, okay, P1, you get pole. He was like, okay, when I get out of the car, I'm going to do the iconic F1 intro position. I want to know if it was just like a natural thing. He was like, okay, open the arms like a bird type of thing, but it was funny. And then, before we move on to actual race day, let's talk about two little topics. First, we're going to talk about the Jacques Villeneuve and Daniel Riccardo situation, and then we're going to talk about Mercedes and Lewis. Let's start with the Jacques Villeneuve about Daniel Ricciardo situation. So, former world champion Jacques Villeneuve had a few harsh words to say about Daniel Ricciardo. He said, and I quote, "Why is he still in F1? You all talk about those first 2 seasons. He was beating a Vettel that was burnt out and trying to invent things. Then he was beating for half a season an 18-year-old Verstappen. He stopped beating anyone after that. I think his image has kept him in F1 more than his actual results. He also said, why are you making a car for him and why can't he get used to the car that he has? Because it's like, if it was Verstappen, okay, you can make a car for Verstappen because he's a 3-time world champion right now. But why are you making a car for someone that's not a world champion? That's basically what he said. Not like word for word, but that's basically what he said. Silence of the presenters after he said that was so loud. Everyone was like just like looking around being like, okay, but what do we say after that, you know? And I mean, was what he said extremely harsh? Yes, it was. But from a racing point of view, not a fan's point of view, he's not completely wrong because for a few years now, everyone says that they need to make a car for him and not that he needs to get used to the car that he has. And especially after the 2022 regulation changes, he started to struggle a lot, which made him lose his seat at McLaren and not have a seat for half of the 2023 season. And I mean, is it harsh to say that he doesn't deserve to be in F1? It is, and I do think that he still has something in him. But at the same time, you don't have to make a car for him. He has to drive the car that he's given because no one would say like, oh, Logan Sargent is performing extremely bad. He crashes almost every weekend. He just doesn't perform. So let's make a car for him and not make him drive like the Williams that he has, you know? And while I will always think that the way that McLaren treated him was absolutely horrible, he didn't suit the McLaren, and it was a good thing that he left the team because he wasn't just performing and putting results on the board. And now he's not doing amazing in RB, but he's not doing that bad. But as to like respond to Jacques Villeneuve, he went and qualified 5th for the Canadian Grand Prix, which is not the first time that he delivers an amazing result after being criticized. So I guess everyone has to start talking shit about him, so he starts performing because it worked and it has worked more than once. But then on the post quali interview, he just said that he doesn't know why he's talking shit, and I didn't put his statement in my notes, but I'm gonna look it up. Said, I heard he's been talking shit, but he always does. I think he's hit his head a few too many times. I don't know if he plays ice hockey or something. I won't give him the time of day, but all those people can suck it. Again, it was a bit harsh what he said. He didn't need to say it the way that he did, but it worked, and he qualified 5th. Didn't finish 5th, but it was like a good qualifying for him. And sometimes drivers just need a little push so they can start doing something good. Moving on from that, let's talk about Lewis and Mercedes because it's driving me insane the way that Mercedes has been treating Lewis, because after all, they have achieved together like such amazing results and some incredible years. And just because he decided to leave the team next year, they were like, okay, so we're going to treat you horribly for the last season that you're with the team. Which is insane to me to think about because half of their fan base is because of Lewis. Lewis leaves, everyone is going to Ferrari because it's already Ferrari, first of all. And like Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari, like they're going to lose so many fans, especially because they're treating him like this. Because if they were like, okay, it's the last year, let's just enjoy, let's have fun. No, they were like, okay, so let's start treating him like he doesn't belong to the team anymore, which is absolutely crazy to me to think about. Even Lewis has said that he doesn't expect to outqualify George this season. When in practice, he shows some good pace, then he gets to qualifying, his pace just starts to disappear, and George starts to appear, I guess, because it's so weird. In Canada, for example, during Q1 and Q2, he was putting on good laps on the board. Then he gets to Q3. He puts on his worst lap for the whole qualifying session, while George puts on a lap for pole position. Then he said after qualifying that for that last lap, his tires weren't brought up to temperature. Just like, why? Just like, why? Like, were they afraid that he was going to get pole? Like, it's insane to me that they're treating him so badly. And during the race, he was expecting to be put on medium tires. They didn't put him on medium tires. They put him on hard tires. And he didn't know that they were going to put George in front of him with medium tires. Just like, again, why? Why can't they just enjoy their last year with a person that gave them the amount of championships that he gave them, the amount of fame that he gave them? Because if it wasn't for Lewis, Mercedes wouldn't be half of what they are right now. And even though they've been struggling since the new regulations, it's true, it happens. Why? Like, why did you decide that instead of just enjoying and doing like a farewell for him and being like, okay, it's your last year, let's just like enjoy it as much as we can? No, let's treat you like absolute crap, make you just seem like you can't outqualify your teammate. Like, it doesn't enter my mind, and absolutely, like, it breaks my heart, really. And on Sunday morning, when they were during the driver's parade, Lewis was just like in a little corner, standing by himself with the saddest face ever, which it broke my heart. It broke my heart. Lewis is one of my favorite drivers, and he's such a genuine person. He's so kind, and the fact that they're treating him like that, just, it's absolutely heartbreaking. And he was alone for so long. Then Charles just came and sat with him on the floor. It was so wholesome, and I can't wait to see their teammate relationship. While I'm sad that C squared is ending, I am really excited for Lewis and Charles because I think they have a pretty good relationship now that they're not teammates. So I think their relationship being teammates is gonna be pretty good. But yeah, it breaks my heart to see Lewis so sad because he's such a good person. If it was like one of those drivers that it's not like an amazing human being and treats the team bad or just is not a good person, I would be like, okay, fine. But no, Lewis is so kind, and the fact that they're treating him like that just, again, breaks my heart. But yeah, let's move on to Sunday. It's race day in Montreal, and we don't have Max on pole position, which is like amazing. But again, we can't celebrate it too much because the fact that he's not starting on pole, it doesn't mean that he's not finishing the race with a 30-second gap from the rest of the field. But we started with a wet race with everyone on intermediate tires, except for the Haas cars, which they were on the full wet tires, which helped because those were the right tires to be on. And K-Mag just started to overtake everyone like he was in a Red Bull. He ended up being 5th, I believe, and he started on like P15, I think. I'm not even sure. But he was overtaking everyone like he was just playing a little game, like Mario Kart vibes. He was like, zoom, zoom, just like overtaking everyone. But then the track started to dry out and he just dropped down, of course. But it was fun to see it in the beginning because he was just like passing everyone like he was in a Red Bull, which is fun to see because I think he's like a penalty away or like 2 points or 5 points away from getting a race ban, which is like, okay, maybe he should be careful. But he was like, okay, I'm just gonna start pressing everyone. If I crash, I crash. If I crash into someone, well, it's just a race ban. I think that's what was going on in his mind. But yeah, the race ended up being so fun because we had quite a lot of action. We had Max taking the lead of the race, and then we had Lando taking the lead of the race, which was like the high point of the race. I was running around. I started to scream and to run around in circles, and my mom seriously started to think that I was going absolutely insane because I was like, Lando is in P1. Like, he overtook Max. I was like, oh my god, is Lando gonna win his second race in a span of a month? Like, is this actually happening? But then, the safety car had to come. Logan had to crash. Of course it was Logan. It's like Miami. I was like, I love Logan. Thanks for crashing. In Canada, I'm like, I hate you, Logan. That wasn't fun. But yeah, safety car came. He didn't pit under safety car. Lost the lead, which was very sad because he was leading very, very, very comfortably. So it was really sad. But yeah, that's racing. After all, it is racing, and sometimes those things happen. But then we were under the safety car. GP came on the radio and told Max that he was P1, George P2, and Lando P3. And then he goes and says like something like, what goes away comes back, or something between those lines. And I was like, okay. And then he said, oh, this is the comeback from Miami, or again, something between those lines. And I was like, okay, was it necessary for him to say? No. Usually I like GP. I love the banter between him and Max. But it wasn't necessary. I was pissed because Lando had lost the lead. And I posted a video saying that it wasn't necessary and that usually I liked him, but I just didn't think that was a very fun thing to say. And people started to comment like, oh, this is a sport. This generation is so sensitive. And I'm like, did I say this wasn't a sport? Those words never came out of my mouth. And while, okay, it's funny, haha, it's a comeback from Miami. Even Lando said that in Miami, Max helped him, and in Canada, Lando helped him. It's like, okay, it's fun. But at the same time, if you're a fan of the driver that just lost the lead to the race, of course you're going to be mad. And I was mad because I was like, Lando was about to win his second race in a span of a month. Of course I'm going to be mad. Like, what the fuck? Like, people need to chill out. And I said that. I responded to the comments, be like, okay, it's funny, but I was mad because Lando had lost the lead. And of course, Lando himself said that it happens. It's racing. These things will always happen. But it pissed me off, and I have the right to be pissed because, well, I like Lando. I want to see Lando win, especially because Ferrari was in absolute shambles, so I needed something to like just survive that race. But yeah, talking about Ferrari, we were already in a bad situation because we were P11 and P13. But we went from a 1-3 in Monaco to a double DNF in Montreal, which is like fun. Very fun. It's so good to be a Ferrari fan. But the moment Charles came on the radio and said he had a problem, I was like, oh, this is how this race is going. This is how it's going to go. He's going to DNF because it always happens. I wanted to cry immediately, and I just knew the race was over. But yeah, he continued to just go around in little funny shapes, you know. And he just ended up DNFing. But he was pissed on the radio. He was like, please tell me how much I'm losing. And they were like, oh, just keep pushing. And he was like, I want to know. And they were like, oh, 0.8. Which is like, okay. It feels so, so, so good to see Charles just being mad. Which might sound weird, but it's like, it feels amazing to see him just being like, please tell me what's happening to my car. Please tell me how much I'm losing per lap, because he's the one driving, and Xavi was like, we are checking. No, just tell him what's happening so he knows. But then he kept going. He went into the pits. It was like a 20-second pit stop or something like that, because I think his car just kind of quit life for a second when he stopped in the pit lines. But then car kind of came back around. He went out. He was a minute behind the whole grid. And it's so funny to see the little track map with all the little circles with the cars. It was like the whole grid pretty like together. And then just Charles in the back, just like, wait for me, I got little legs type of vibe. And yeah, it wasn't great. And to help the fact that he had a PU issue, the strategy calls weren't great as well, which is like, okay, let's just put everything wrong that we can do together and let's do it. But yeah, it wasn't a great race. And then I think Carlos took the "we come as a package" sentence a bit too literally, and he had a spin and he retired. So double DNF, which is like, okay, just let's focus on Lando. Let's focus on Oscar. Let's focus on Lewis. Let's focus on everyone else. Let's ignore Ferrari. That's what I did, because if I didn't ignore them, I would cry. Okay? It was a hurtful race for Ferrari, which we are used to. But after Monaco, we're like, okay, maybe our time is coming. We're starting to fight again. Maybe not. Maybe not. Let's hope that Spain is a better race and that maybe Carlos will get his first home win. But yeah, overall, this race was pretty good. We had lots of chaos, lots of action. It was like a wet and dry race. It was like, it was wet, then it was dry, then it was wet, then it was dry. It was like a bit of a chaotic race. But Montreal always delivers because it's a very good track, and it was a very good race after Monaco. Because Monaco is like, okay, it was an amazing race. Charles got his first home win, but Monaco is pretty straightforward, like basically zero overtakes. This one was like a very fun race to be like, okay, George is in the lead, Max is in the lead, Lando's in the lead. We had a fight for the win, which was pretty good. And then we had action until the checkered flag, because Lewis, at the end, he was trying to get that podium position. Unfortunately, he couldn't get it. But it was not a boring race, even though we got Max as a winner. But again, he fought for that. And I've said this multiple times. If he won every single race of the season, but he fought for it, it was like, okay, Lando's on the lead, Lewis is on the lead, Max overtakes them, gets the lead, wins the race. I would be okay, mad because I'm not a Red Bull fan, but I would be okay because it's like, okay, he fought for the win. When it's those races that he starts on pole, he finishes P1 with like a 20-second lead, those are the races that I absolutely hate. When it's a race that he fights for it, I'm like, okay, it's annoying because I'm not a Max fan, but it's fun because he had to fight for it. So yeah, we had action until the checkered flag. And it was a very good race. And I hope that we have more races like this, but with different race winners. But yeah, this was everything for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to share the episode on Instagram, on TikTok, everywhere you want. And don't forget to rate the podcast on Spotify. And I'll see you very soon. Bye.